welcome back to Switch to Linux and another Distro Wars. And today we are going to have a look at two amazing distros that I am not sure I am going to be able to declare a winner. Linux Mint Cinnamon, my personal favorite, compared to Manjaro Cinnamon. Has a lot running for it. And so we are going to look at several different issues. Today we are going to look at the basic RAM usage, theming, the ability to update, applications on install and ease to add applications, snap/flatpak support. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it indifferent or whatever else? The ease of customization, getting started with the distribution, and what kernels do we have to run and have available to us. And so as we look through this list, first let's jump on over and have a quick look at their websites, and then we will spin one of these guys up and we'll run from there. So over at Manjaro, they do have several official builds. So if you were to hit the try Manjaro, their website is still horrible because their homepage menu does not actually have the download button. You got to click the download button on the homepage, get to it. So while their new website is modern and flashy, it saves. It has a lot to go for organization. Although Linux Mint's site is just about as bad. When I want to find Linux Mint's blog, I have to go an internet search for it rather than find it on the menu. I know it exists. I just don't know where it happens to be. So anyway, that being said, the official Manjaros are XFCE, KDE, Plasma, GNOME, and we also have an architect, which allows you to basically customize everything. There are also these community editions, and inside of your community editions, this is actually where we have the Cinnamon. So Cinnamon is not an official Manjaro, it is a community release. All of these community releases, though, are generally just as good, but we are going to go ahead and test that. There's some things that I know the latest version of Manjaro does right, at least in the core releases. I'm not sure if they've done in the community releases, because I've seen some issues. But you can see they have a variety of different desktop environments. We, of course, are using the Cinnamon desktop environment. But you can grab a whole lot of options. Manjaro, of course, is based on Arch, although they do hold packages back, so it doesn't roll quite as fast as Arch, but pretty fast. Rolls way faster than Linux Mint, which will roll approximately when the glacier recedes a few inches. But back to Linux Mint. Now, the stability of it is what I love about it, and that's why it is absolutely still my favorite. On the Linux Mint site, we do have a pure Debian-based Linux Mint Debian Edition 4 LMDE, or we also have the Linux Mint 19.3. Next beta should be dropped sometime this month, which next one will, of course, be 20, based on the Ubuntu 20 LTS. These are giving us Cinnamon, Mate, XFCE. We have, as the current version, we have 64 and 32-bit. Albeit in the next release, they will only be 64-bit. However, Linux Mint Debian Edition will retain 32-bit for probably forever because it's based on Debian, and Debian doesn't drop 32-bit support. So you can go ahead and grab those from their website. You can download the distributions and spin them up. So what we are going to do here is we are going to have a look at our desktops here, and we'll start with Manjaro. And as we get started here on Manjaro, I'll just talk briefly about the installation steps of these guys. Pardon the black screen. That doesn't seem to have a big loading animation on this community build. So we just sit here with a black screen. You're not sure if your computer has crashed or not. Linux Mint, at least we have a nice little loading screen. But the installation on both of these are the same. Now, since this is a community build of Manjaro and not an official, it did not give us the option to choose which one of our Office suites to install. So it either didn't install one at all, or it went with LibreOffice as my assumption. I haven't checked yet. We will check that as we go in. Otherwise, the installation process was very easy, very simple, no concerns at all. Both of them very easy installers. I believe Manjaro is Calamaris, but don't quote me on that. And Linux Mint, the one based on Ubuntu, uses the Ubiquity installer. Both very easy systems. And I have no idea why it did not start as full screen. It did on my test, so I was like, oh, that should be fine. So let's go ahead and throw it into full screen. Now we're not going to cite the distro is an issue with that. First thing we might like to do here is let's go ahead and have a look at the friendliness for just getting started. So supposing you are new to Linux. On Manjaro, now the first screen that we're not seeing here is we did actually have an option on the very first boot that allowed you to choose, do you want this version of Cinnamon where the icons are more resemble like your Windows 10, or do you want to go with an older Windows XP like smaller icons, quick launch bar instead of pinning things? You did have that option on Manjaro as a pop-up, and I'm sure it's possible to get that guy back. We could go ahead and we might be able to look for it. It's probably in the settings. You can see that it did give us a pop-up here that there are some updates that we can install. So we do have the option here. Now we actually have this is actually language packs is what it is. So we actually have two setting icons. One of these is this guy down here with the shield and the check mark on it. This is actually POMAC, and this is going to be checking for basic system updates. The other one, which is the Manjaro logo, is going to have some Manjaro specific things, language packages, kernels, and things like that. We'll come back to that in a moment. So on the pop-up screen, we really only have basic documentation type things, and we do have an application launcher where we have the ability to install some very common, very popular applications. So we have Opera, Midori, Firefox, which is installed, Chromium, and Brave as easy options to install for web browsers. Now, there are more applications than this. This is just your most common, most up-to-date applications. Okay, so there is your basic startup screen. So not a lot of super helpful stuff in the startup screen, but at least we have a little bit of something, and we did get a chance to check that. Let's see if HTOP is installed on either of these. So HTOP is installed, and it looks like we are running, before doing anything, Manjaro is going to be running on about 653 megabytes of RAM. So for a Cinnamon desktop, that is not a lot. So it is running very lean on your RAM. We looked at our updating is quite simple. You can, of course, just update right by pulling up your package manager, which is called POMAC. And then over here, you can check your updates tab, and it's going to go ahead and check your system for updates. And totally shocker that we have an Arch system that's up to date. But I guess I did just install this about 3 hours ago, so kind of expected that. All right, as far as installing various applications, what I'd like to do now is I want to check your preferences because what Manjaro has done right, at least on the core builds, is they have given us an easy ability to install snaps and flat packages from POMAC. What I'm seeing here now is that this is not giving me the similar options. So we can enable the Arch user repository, which is pretty much a community build of pretty much anything and everything you might want. This particular version is not easily allowing us to check our snaps and our flat packs from POMAC itself. Flatpak and snap support may be enabled in the system, but we're not going to be able to install them out of the box that I can see. Let's just go ahead and check. So GIMP is already installed. Let's look for Kdenlive, and I just want to see where this is from. It says there on the top it was from the official repositories. So definitely from the official repositories. So we do not have GUI support for snap or flatpak. So if I want to install snaps or flatpaks from this, we can't. I personally don't like them. I use them as a last option, but it is nice that the core Manjaro does allow you to do that from your GUI here. So with that, that's going to be something that we'll look into. So we're going to mark that as a no for the GUI. As far as our overall theming, you can see the theming is good. It is nice. It is consistent. Let's go ahead and pull up a few different types of applications here. Let's go with, let's go ahead and install, where's our graphics? Let's have a look at what GIMP looks like. What we're probably going to see is everything is going to look perfect because Manjaro, if it's good at anything, it is good at making absolutely anything and everything look amazing out of the box. So, yeah, it does look like that might be, So it looks like actually they did not do quite the matching theming necessarily for GIMP, albeit GIMP does like to use its own themes sometimes. So that might be more of a GIMP thing than a Manjaro theme. So there is our theming as overall, and let's have a look in our system settings and see what type of custom theming that we have available to us. So I know Linux Mint has a pile of theming options. Here we have just kind of some basic things. We do have our Mint X, our Mint Y from our Linux Mint. We have our Mint Y Dark. We have, which it looks as though this is using, what's this using? Mint Y Teal. So that's using Mint Y Teal. So it's basically grabbing your Mint Y Teal from in here. And that's going to set everything else. So remember your desktop theme will override everything else. But we do actually have pretty much all of the same options. It does look like a few things are missing from here from Linux Mint, but not a whole lot. And my guess is that these themes are going to override those anyway. So that's actually really good. In font selection, we have backgrounds. We do have a lot of simple Manjaro backgrounds in here. And we do have our generic GNOME background. So that's all we have if you're looking for good backgrounds out of the box. Hey, that's easy to fix anyway. We just add your own things. Okay, so here's our hardware support. One thing to note is that Manjaro is not going to necessarily have a driver tool, so updating your drivers is not going to be quite as seamless as it will be on Linux Mint. All right, let's have a look at our login window administration. So here's our basic backgrounds. We can choose, let's see, here's our users. We can allow automatic logins, things. Overall, the login was pretty good. We do have a Manjaro settings manager. So inside here, hardware configurations, we have our kernel, language packs, locales. All right. Let's go ahead and have a look at our kernels. So Manjaro has this extra tool in order to allow you to choose your kernels. So you can see that we are running 5.6 kernel right now for Manjaro. And we also have the ability to roll up to experimentals or real-time kernels if we want to. You can roll all the way back to older LTS kernels if you need to do that. So we can easily choose which kernel that we want to use. And let's have a look at our basic applications out of the box. So we are going to have, let's see, software tokens, virtual keyboards. Looks like we do not have a USB tool managements like we do in Linux Mint, but for the most part, it looks as though most of the other applications are going to be fairly similar. Of course, this kept GIMP instead of the drawing application that we have. Microsoft Office Online, is that an ICE package? Okay, Manjaro just lost all credibility with me, putting Microsoft Office Online right inside of here. Blech. Like I said, they did not give me, is ICE installed? I don't know if that's an ICE package or what. I didn't see the Office tool, but bleh, burn it with fire. Let's see, I dock some points down for that. All right, we have Lollipop for music. That's actually pretty cool. We do have a USB tool. It's just in a different place. So we do have a USB flasher. So I take it back. We do have USB flasher. All right. Let's see. We have our Firefox. And I guess looking at installing applications, we can just kind of right-click down here for your package manager, and then we can install anything that we might want to install. Since we have the Arch user repository, we will have the ability to install a whole lot more things on Manjaro than we will even on Linux Mint, although Linux Mint is going to be fairly easy. The updates and the packages are all inside of one tool here, streamlining the process, which is actually a good win for Manjaro, as Linux Mint has those separated into separate areas. So there is our look at Manjaro. So we'll come on back and have a look at Linux Mint next. And here we are on Linux Mint. So here with Linux Mint, we are going to have some updates to do because I installed it and I did not run updates after I did so. But when we first land on Linux Mint, we actually have a very helpful welcome screen with just a little bit of information. So it's a small enough amount that you'll actually read it. And then you have a series of first steps. So inside the first steps, it actually takes us to some places we need to do. System snapshots. This is like your old Windows system restore. We have a driver manager, something Manjaro does not have, where the driver manager gives us the ability to install drivers for things that are not in the open source repositories. We also have the update manager. That's what's yelling at us down here, and we'll have a look at that. We have our traditional and our modern desktop layouts. The default is modern. This is what it was saying with grouped or non-grouped. But as far as grouped or non-grouped, as we were saying in between here, if you actually go down to your panel settings, and you go over to I got to remember exactly where it is now. Let's see where it's at. I got to remember exactly where it was now. But if you actually go ahead and edit all these guys, then there's actually the options to group these. I think it's over here. We configure this one here. All right, so over here, you actually have the ability to, there's button labels, button apps. We can show thumbnails. We can enable various things. I got to remember where the grouping is. There you go. So they're grouped or they're non-grouped. So you can turn on or turn off grouped. You can basically turn this into the exact thing that you would expect. And that's actually my preference, is to use the modern and just tweak the layout, which takes all of about 10 minutes or less to do. I'd say 3 or 4 minutes. And then I get the same format that I've always had that I like the most. But you do choose between the traditional and the modern. Now, this is the only spot I know of to change this is in the welcome screen, but you can always reboot up the welcome screen. We have our launch to the system settings, a software manager, and also a launch to the firewall. So we can go ahead and show our firewall. We have the toggle switch. We can show or hide that at startup. All right, this one I'm pretty sure htop is not going to be installed. So let's go ahead and install it. Sudo apt install htop. So we'll go ahead and do that just before we get too far into the video here. I just want to do a similar comparison as to what the RAM usage looks like on the two systems side by side. My guess is Manjaro might actually be a little bit lighter. 637. No, actually, Cinnamon was all of 22 megabytes lighter. So yeah, actually Manjaro was 653, Linux Mint Cinnamon is 638. That actually surprises me. Usually Cinnamon runs a little bit higher RAM than that. So, comparison though, they looked pretty good. All right. So as far as updating, now this is kind of where there's only one place to install your software packages, and this is in your software manager, which is, in my opinion, one of the better, maybe not the absolute best software manager in Linux. The new POMAC gives it a run for its money, but what I like about it here is, well, Linux Mint does not support your snaps out of the box, which is a reason I like it. You can add it if you want to, but it does have Flatpaks out of the box, and it does a really good job. If I search for something that we have a repository and a Flatpak version, you can clearly see which one is Flatpak and which one is repository. You can tell from the icons that the version of Kdenlive here is about as old as dirt. So 4.17, I think we're on 4.19 is probably what we're closer to. So let's see. The Flatpak should be more up to date. I want to see if I can get a version number for it. Oh, 20. Okay, so we're already up to version 20.04. So you are going to get a little bit older software just because this is based on the on the Ubuntu 18.04 package base. At the time I'm recording this video later on this month, the new beta and will be out for Linux Mint and the new version, which is going to have newer software. Now, does it bother me the software's old? It does not. In fact, that's kind of what I prefer because I'm not getting constant feature rolls, which is going to be an advantage of Linux Mint over Manjaro. Every time you run system updates, and you're going to be running updates every day, your software could roll to a brand new version, which completely change your UI or even your workflow. And so if you're trying to do work on your real computers, and that's really what most of us need a computer for, is to get real work done, then Linux Mint, in my opinion, is better because it's not going to constantly be changing everything around on you. As far as updates themselves, that is a separate tool. So the first time you run it, it does want to give you a notice about installing your system restore point. You can actually turn that off. Let's go ahead and apply this update, which is just an update to the update manager, and then I can show you where you change your kernels. So both distros will allow you to edit and change the kernels. Manjaro, it's the separate kernel tool. In Linux Mint, it's the tool inside of the Mint Update Manager. Albeit, I will say this, you do have in Manjaro, the system updates and the software installation is all in the same tool. Linux Mint is separated into two separate tools. So we do have a lot of updates here. If you head on over to Linux kernels, ignore your warning because, hey, we want to break our system anyway. You can see over here that we are currently running, let's see what we're currently running. Okay, so we are currently running 5.0. Remember, Manjaro was 5.6. So if you do need, and it does say end of life. Now, the reason I installed it and it says end of life is because we installed it and I did not run system updates yet. That will actually roll up. I think it will roll itself up until up to 5.3. So that might be a better accurate portrayal of what it's going to run. But since Manjaro is rolling and Linux Mint is point release, the kernel is going to stay where it is until a system software update updates it. So that will, my guess is, roll up to 5.3. You're not going to have an out-of-date kernel when the system is up to date. But still out of the box is giving us 5.0. My guess is 5.3 when we run our system updates. I should actually be able to see at the somewhere around here what it's going to install. Not going to tell me right here, but it'll do that. All right, so we can choose our kernels. We can easily change and update them. Theming. Our theming overall, we have more of a Windows light theming, system dark theming motif going with Linux Mint. We do, however, have a variety of themes, just like the Manjaro had. We have 3 options here. Our icons, we have a whole lot more options, about 3 times more options as we had on Manjaro. Here's our button themes, and here's our various desktop themes. So we do have a lot of theming options available to us. Linux Mint will also have this other little triangle warning down here, which is a status notification. So it basically detects problems. Some people have criticized it. It's a little bit, maybe a little scary for some people if you don't know what it is. And all it's doing is warning, install language packs. No, I think our language packs are good enough. All right, we can set a root password just so that we can, if you need to access a separate root account separate from your main administrator, you can do that. And then you can launch your system restore points here as well. So let's go ahead and push ignore on all of those, and then that will not bother me again unless it sees something else down the road. Applications out of the box. We have mostly going to be very similar applications. As I noticed, we do have the USB image writer. It's under accessories in Linux Mint, whereas it was under administration in Manjaro. Linux Mint does have an extra USB stick formatter, which I found does fix weird, messed up USB drives that don't want to format other ways. Other than that, a lot of your applications are going to be similar. We do have drawing instead of GIMP. Their decision to do that was drawing is a much easier application to use than GIMP, so it catered better to the simple audience that just needs to be able to do something simpler in graphics. More think Windows Paint rather than installing Photoshop out of the box. We do have Firefox, Thunderbird. We do have the full Office suite here and no Microsoft Office link in here. That is absolute instant Linux Mint win. All right, we have Celluloid and Rhythmbox for our tools. Man, Lollipop would be really cool. Lollipop, though, is less functional and more bling, versus Rhythmbox actually allows you to subscribe to podcasts right from Rhythmbox, which is awesome if you listen to podcasts. All right, and everything else in here is going to be fairly similar. If we launch into our system settings, it's going to seem fairly similar to the Manjaro. Down here at administrative, we do have the driver manager that we did not have inside of Manjaro. So we've looked at, I think we've pretty much looked at everything that was on our basic list to do. So which one of these guys is the better, more superior, the best distribution? Which distro should you go with? Well, I think you're going to have a win on either one of these distros. They are both excellent. They're both going to support what you need. Here's going to be your breakdown and the biggest breakdown. I personally use Linux Mint over Manjaro. The reason I do that is I am more focused on using my computers to get professional work done. I'm an author, I'm a web developer. I need my system to be similar and stable every single time I boot it up. Okay, I don't want programs to change. I don't want the UI to run. Like one day I was working on an audiobook and Audacity updated and they took all of your what used to be called, oh, I forget the term they used to use. They used to have a term for what is now your macros, and it used to be accessible under the file menu. So it used to be file menu, and I'll make up some word like file menu threads or something. It was something like that. And then they changed it in one change without having documentation about it. They called it macros, and they put it under the tools menu. Took me 35 minutes to figure out where they did that, and that's designed for audiobook automation so I don't have to do a lot of crazy, insane stuff. That's the type of stuff I don't want to see happen. I only want a software package to update when I'm ready and can devote the time to relearning it should I have to. Another good example in the author world is Sigil. Sigil just recently did an update where it dropped the what you see, what you get editor of book editing. Now you have to install a separate application and link it. If you're unaware of that and you just roll an update because you're running a Manjaro, you're like, where'd that go? And it can frustrate you for a good hour, send you reading off into the developer's website to figure out, oh, they took that out. You have to install this application and do this other thing to get that back. These are the things I don't like to happen. So for that reason, I like the older packages. I want the system to be secure, which it's secure. The older packages does not mean it is insecure. We have been drilled into our head, security update, security update, security update so much that we fail to recognize the differentiation between a feature update and a security update. Ubuntu-based distributions, Debian-based distributions, they get every security update as they roll out. They just don't get the feature updates. That's why I use Linux Mint. Now, if you are on the other side of the coin and you're doing hardware development and you're working with drivers and custom builds, you are going to want to use Manjaro because you want to always be running on the absolute latest version of everything. If your job is a tinkerer or you're doing tutorial videos about how to change and reuse different things, maybe teach people how to use a new version of a software, you want the Manjaro version. There's going to be some advantages of that. So there's really no one perfect distribution to say everyone has to use this or everyone has to use that. Either way you rub it, they're both great distributions. Your fundamental difference on these, do you want the older versions of the packages that are not going to change on you until you intend to change them, or do you want the latest versions of the packages so stuff is always moving around on you to get you a rolling type system? That's your overall point. So I'm going to declare that they sit on the battleground, they're dueling out for all eternity, and there will not be a winner. That's my take. Let me know your take about these distros in the comments down below. If you liked the video, go ahead and subscribe. Give me some thumbs up, maybe some thumbs down if you want to. Leave some comments down there as well, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.